Merry Christmas! Happy New Year. Welcome to the Anglo-Italian pod. As always, my name is Rory and I'm joined by my very good friend Adam. Adam, how you doing, man?
Yeah, very good, thank you. If you've listened to our Italian edition of this week's pod, you'll know that I've just come back from Lapland, enjoying and embracing minus temperatures of minus 22 in particular. So very special to get into this festive mood. But more importantly, Rory, how are things in Milan?
Well, I watched. Did you get to have a word with the big man? Did you meet the big man? Did you put in
I
a word
did,
for
I
me for
did,
Arsenal to get a
yeah.
title?
I did have a word, I did ask him for a little bit of favour on Wycombe Wanderers. He said he would see what he could do. But yeah, no, he seemed quite chipper, it's fair to say, trying to break his linguistic kind of style. But yeah, no, he seems really good and a good top form, shall we say, and gave us a bit of advice as well along
Nice.
the way. But yes, it was all good.
Nice. It was a very busy time of the year for him, eh? Yes.
Yeah.
All things good in Milan at the moment. I've now switched my baddie shirt, but I am still drinking the Pugliese beer, getting myself warmed up for my trip to Puglia. And yeah, going to be heading down south for Christmas, like a goose. That's what geese do, right? Is it geese that go south for winter? And yeah,
Yes.
going to be heading to the south of Italy to eat lots of food and drink lots of raffle. So I'm quite excited about that. But we've had a pretty big weekend in the Premier League. We are doing a Sunday night record, guys, controversially. So we have just seen the absolute chaos that was Liverpool Tottenham Hotspur, or Tottenham Hotspur Liverpool. We will be talking about that again and why Spurs haven't changed again, but maybe why it's feeling like Liverpool's year. We will then be looking at Aston Villa, Man City, just as things continue to get worse for Pep and Man City. Just what is happening there? Where do we see this season going? And then we'll be giving a little bit of love to Nottingham Forest to continue their charge for the top four in Champions League football next year. Just how far do we think they can go? And of course, we'll give you a roundup of all the results in the Premier League this weekend before we take a look at the opening of the January transfer window. We'll try to predict some business and look at positions where we think teams need to address in this window. So, guys, we've not got much time. We're going to go for a very quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk all things Premier League. See you then. And we are back. Welcome to the Premier League Roundup, and it's time for Tottenham Hotspur 3, Liverpool 6. I thought, well, it's not a controversial take to be like, I thought there'd be goals in this game. And we weren't disappointed, but I was bitterly disappointed by just how poor Spurs were. Before we heap praise on Liverpool, and they will get plenty of praise.
Yeah.
I feel like I watched the same goal being scored over and over and over and over again. It feels like when we were chatting on the WhatsApp group during this game, I was saying this is the opposite of management from Ange Postecoglu at this point now. This is seeing your team repeat the same mistake and seeing the glaring error in front of you and refusing to do anything about it. It feels like he's doing the opposite of his job at this point. I feel like he's kind of getting to the point of setting his players up to fail, like we were talking about Russell Martin, like we were talking about Kompany last year. It's kind of getting to that point, right?
Yeah, and I feel like I'm getting a bit bored of the subjects now because it feels like now we're at a point of acceptance that Ange won't change things. So how long is it till we kind of say Big Ange is now trying to get himself deliberately sacked now, like to a point of like he's expressed that he's not going to change his ways regardless of how much we call out his tactics. And even in this game, right, you feel like, right, you've got a really makeshift team in certain areas of the pitch now. So you kind of go, well, the philosophy doesn't suit these kind of like players at the moment. You've got a rookie that shouldn't be playing at centre back, but he is having to fill the gaps right now. You've got certain players in the kind of upper third of the pitch that aren't even doing the basics there. And you kind of look at it and kind of go, well, why don't you just change the system? Why don't you make it just a bit more difficult for your opponent and give them something to think about? Because that could then potentially allow you in the second half or maybe on counterattacks to really then kind of show your explosiveness and maybe your style of football. But we are at that point now, Rory, where I just feel whatever we say on this podcast, and I'm sure a lot of media accounts are also saying the same things, is we can talk and highlight about the pragmatic approach that he should be taking, but he's just not going to do it. So how long is it till Levy kind of sucks it up and kind of goes, do you know what, I've had enough and we need to change our direction? But I appreciate there is the other aspect of what does that achieve in the grand scheme of things if Levy also knows about the practicalities of the situation as well. So I don't know, Rory. What was your kind of overriding thoughts of the whole situation? Because, yeah, it feels like we're banging our heads against the wall again.
The Manchester United conversation has become the Tottenham Hotspur conversation. I just feel like we're talking in circles about the same issue over and over again.
Yeah.
And I know that I'm in an Arsenal shirt, so a lot of people will just be like, "Oh, sod off, we're not taking your opinion seriously."
Yeah.
And you're fully right to do that, but that's not because I'm wearing an Arsenal shirt. That's because I am who I am. But I think, look, I just wonder at what point this season becomes out of control and they start to go, okay, well, now we're addressing maybe the idea of not having European football next year, or we're talking at the hit that would make to the financial, like to the bank sheet. Like they're now currently on 23 points.
Yeah.
Now they're only 5 points behind Bournemouth in 5th place, but when you look at the form of those two teams, Bournemouth are unbeaten in 5, 4 wins in 5. Tottenham 1 win in 5, 3 losses, right? Like this isn't a team with an upward trajectory. This isn't a team with a lot of momentum behind them. Like I think you already look at that and think a 5-point gap is a hell of a gap to overcome there. So at what point do they, because ultimately all the decisions in the Premier League are made about the finances, right? Once the finances are hit, boards panic and they start making decisions. I'm intrigued to see how long they give him, because I think what we saw there was, like, I understand having your mentality, like your philosophy and your like, but if someone says to you how not to play it, like, what is Liverpool's dream scenario in a game? How would they want their opponents to play? They would want them to give wide open spaces to run into so that Salah and Gakpo and Jota and Nunez and whoever else can run in, catch you on the transition and do those balls across the box and score. And it's like Tottenham were doing everything that Liverpool wanted them to do. And as every single goal went in, you were like, why are you not changing this? Why are you not just dropping a few yards deeper? It's not like you're selling out. You're not like...
Yeah.
It's just a little bit of pragmatism. A little bit of, do I want this to be embarrassing or not? Right? Because when, like, 6-3, weirdly, makes it sound better than it is. Because when it was 5-1, that looks like a hammering, right?
Yeah.
It's 6-3 weirdly sounds okay. They had like there was some give and go. There was a little bit, but this wasn't even. This was Tottenham taking the chances they made, the 3 chances they made, and Liverpool, they should have had 10. Like Liverpool, easily. At some point I tweeted out they can have 8 here if they really want to push. They can get 8 here because it was just constant. I think this is kind of where Ange gets away with it, because the fans will walk out and go, well, you know, we scored 3 against top of the table. And like people are looking at that rather than going, we've just shipped 6 and could have got done by 10. Like, and I think it's really, I can understand now how the tide is turning against him in the Tottenham fan base, because they're routinely getting embarrassed now. And like, it just doesn't take much to just drop a yard deeper, a couple of yards deeper, when you've got a makeshift defence and you've got injuries. Like Arsenal have been crucified this year for not playing great football because we've had injuries. We've not been able to play the football we want to play, but that's because you have to make allowances. You have to go, okay, we can't play free-flowing football when we haven't got our main attacking outlet. We haven't got a consistent left back. We need to make things a little bit more compact, like, because that's how you get points. And ultimately, that's what you're in the game to do. And I think I can't believe how just mal-managed that game was by Ange, honestly. And I don't know why I'm still surprised. Because I think at some point I'm expecting the embarrassment to kick in and the kind of, okay, I have to do something about this. But he's just not... It's not going to happen, is it? It's not going to happen. So where do they go? When they don't qualify for Europe and then they can't get the players that they want to get, what do they do?
I really don't know. I was trying to compare this situation to previous managers at Spurs where they've been shown the door. So likes of Conte, for example, and Mourinho. I don't think they've been that embarrassed at those moments. I felt like it was more a natural friction between the players and the manager, and the results themselves not coming to the forefront. Whereas here, we've got a clear kind of style of football that just doesn't suit the players, right? It just doesn't suit what they're trying to do. And I appreciate Ange is trying to build this culture, but it's just not working, right? And the lack of adaptability to his style. Like most managers, when they go through a period where things aren't working, and we'll allude to this with Man City as well, they kind of strip it back. They look at, right, let's just change things just for the sake of, let's try and have a clean sheet, for example, is something to build upon. I just get no impression that's kind of the foresight of Ange. That there doesn't feel like there is. Even I think it was after the second goal, he was kind of tutting, like it was like, here we go again kind of vibes. And it was like, but you're the man in charge, right? I think you alluded to
You can do
this about
something
2
about
weeks ago.
this.
You can actually do something, implement it, get an extra man in that midfield, or do something to change it up. You are the man that has deployed this tactics. It's not working, then fix it up. I can't get over the fact that we are having the same conversations about this. But I'm now deeply at that point where I just go, do you know what? I would just cut my losses now. It's just not working for Ange. It's not working for Spurs. And despite this kind of philosophy of, it's my style, mate, get over it, it's just not going to be any fun for anyone. I can see this being even more toxic further down the line. So I suspect, and this is my kind of thoughts on this, Rory, is that I feel like Ange is just riding this out until he is actually sacked. I think he's just happy to wait for that payday to happen and just kind of go, shit happens, I'll move on to the next project kind of thing. And that's the vibe that I get. And I feel sorry because I think there is generally a good manager in him, but I don't know if, it's just gone beyond that now. It's just gone to a point where he just doesn't care that much. And I think you made a good point a few episodes ago about he saw what Tottenham was all about when there was that game against Man City where the fans were like, let's lose this. And he kind of saw the shift in terms of mentality and knew what Spurs actually stood for. Look, Conte alluded to it, Mourinho's alluded to it. There is something deep in kind of Spurs culture, which is that they accept that they are who they are. They don't care about really success ultimately, even though they kind of portray that they have to win a certain Tottenham way of style of football, whatever that actually is, by the way, because I don't know, they seem to allude to this 80 style where you seem to be winning for fun, Rory, but I just think they've got to get over themselves now and just kind of look at the bigger picture and kind of go, we need someone that is going to instill some pragmatism in terms of the squad. And I will allude to this, and I'm sure Bournemouth fans will hate me for saying this, but Iraola seems the perfect person to come in and just change the philosophy there. But yeah, Rory, I'm stuck.
It takes a lot for me to get bored of talking about Tottenham getting battered. Like, it really takes a lot for me to get bored of it, and I'm currently sick of it because I'm just like, I'm watching it and being like, this cannot continue. But let's talk about Liverpool because I'm firmly in I've said it in a couple of episodes ago, it's not our year. It definitely feels like it's Liverpool's year. Like, this was the kind of the non-resistant force coming against the irresistible object as Liverpool just completely battered them, right? And I think their clinicalness in front of goal, if you're looking at Salah, if you're looking at Luis Diaz, Szoboszlai in this game was absolutely incredible. This team is hitting new levels now, right? This team is like, is it that the team has just developed another year? Is it that Slot's just made those key differences? Would this have happened under Klopp anyway because of the way the squad's been built? Like, it feels like they've hit completely new levels this year.
I think Slot deserves a lot of credit for the way that they're playing right now. I don't buy into this Klopp would have got the same style of football because I think he plays a different style of formation, a different style of football. And I think just it feels like, for me anyway, Liverpool have matured a lot more in terms of their ball control, knowing the right moments to kind of switch to play, exploit the space in particular as well. They're getting players like Salah to always be in those key positions. My little boy was saying, it's always bloody Salah. It's always Salah that seems to be mentioned here. Like, that's all I'm hearing is Salah. And it's just like, yeah, because, that's where the space is every time. And if it wasn't him, then Luis Diaz was definitely on the other end of it. And as you alluded to, Szoboszlai, again, a player that we knew there was potential, maybe didn't necessarily show it under Klopp, but certainly got to those levels now that is attracting the interest of the likes of Real Madrid to kind of maybe rethink their strategy as well from a midfield point of view as well. But I think you look at the balls like from the wing back position, Trent Alexander-Arnold as well, being able to kind of ping that cross in as well. I mean, there's so many superlatives. Even I feel Gapco, his game has massively improved on the slot as
Absolutely.
well. Like, I don't think we would have seen that under Klopp as well. So, and the quality that they're able to bring off the bench. I was reminded earlier, Roy, when I saw Harvey Elliott, he was a guy that I thought might have a breakthrough season this year. And we haven't seen anything from him yet. And that's scary because you never know if there is an injury. There's another player that just slots in, but you've got Diego Jota as well. It's a scary precedent that Liverpool have got. To your point, I think they will be clear at least by 7 to 8 points by the end of the season. I think that's how clinical it's going to be from a Liverpool perspective. So a lot of credit to Slot and what he's achieved there.
No, absolutely. I said it as the season has gone on. I've started the season thinking, oh, they're an okay team on a good run. To being that, okay, they're a good team on a good run. To now, I'm like, they're an excellent team on an excellent run, and because it just every game continues to go. And I think the only issue for them is these contracts that are expiring and how they ever replace Alexander-Arnold. Because that cross for, I think it was the Diaz goal. There's a lot of goals to remember, guys. I think he put the cross in for the Diaz header, right? It was just absolutely inch perfect. What a player he is. But I think, Liverpool, it's kind of theirs to lose now, really. And I've just been really impressed. And if it wasn't going to be Arsenal to win it, I would rather Liverpool win it, I'll be honest, because at least it feels like they've done it the proper way and they play great football, and it leaves obviously they've already got a legacy in Liverpool, but for a player like Salah to finish on another Premier League title or whatever would just be unbelievable. And his goal numbers now are absolutely insane. Your son's right. Every time he's in space, and especially against Spurs, because they just thought, you know what, we don't need to mark the left side of the field. We'll just let him run. Absolute monster. Unbelievable. But a great performance from Liverpool. And that kind of solidifies their space up top, with Chelsea dropping points with a 0-0 to Everton. They are now, is it 5 points? They are 4 points clear at the top with a game in hand. Arsenal trying their best to catch up, but probably not doing enough just yet. Let's leave that game there. So, any other talking points from that game? I think that was it, really.
Can't think of anything obvious now.
Tottenham shit, Liverpool good. That's about right, I think, right? So let's go on to the next game we're going to talk about. Aston Villa 2, Manchester City 1. I really genuinely enjoyed this game, not just because City lost, but there was many different things I enjoyed about this game. Villa could have had 3 goals within the first 2 minutes. Morgan Rogers straight through from kickoff, basically. John Duran straight through from kickoff to nearly score. Then Pau Torres nearly scored from the corner. And then that was kind of the pattern of the game. Man City just completely did not have any shape, any ability to stop this tide. Let's talk about Villa first, because I feel like we have to give them the credit. We have to, they've had an inconsistent season. They've been struggling with games post-Europe. But this is kind of beyond Yuri Tielemans, who was fantastic this game.
Yeah.
I really enjoy watching John McGinn when he's in full flow.
Yeah.
The way he holds the ball, buys himself space, and there was so many times when he was running and he just waits for the perfect time to put the ball through. I really enjoyed his performance. But Tielemans, this is one of those performances where you're like, this is the player that was on Championship Manager, right? This is the player that we expected.
This was the promise.
He was absolutely incredible in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, I think match of the day kind of highlighted him and Onana, and how in that kind of quadrants and maybe triquants at some points, they were able to kind of dismantle any of the attacks that Man City did, but immediately kind of put the pressure on the Man City defence and the midfield straight away as soon as they picked up the ball, whether it be Onana, whether it be Tielemans, or whether that be Morgan Rogers, for example. They were just all over that kind of area. I think if you look at the heat map, it was probably all red around the areas. It was just bonkers, absolutely, the amount of kind of distance that they covered. And to your point, Tielemans was probably not kind of seen as potentially that type of player at the beginning of the season, but he's progressed under Emery. Emery's got some other elements of his game that maybe there were the signs in the first season when he joined Leicester City that we all like, this is an interesting player. And he certainly pushed on under Emery. And I think it's the system that certainly helps him. I think it allows him to be more free-flowing in terms of that football. Yeah, I mean, it helps when you've got willing runners as well. From a wing-back position, the likes of Matty Cash and Lucas Digne are able to exploit Man City on a number of occasions. Although the end product was a bit suspect in this particular game, I think the fact that you've got willing runners as well in John Duran and obviously Ollie Watkins allowed the ball to be played into those dangerous positions that helped elevate the team into that kind of third of the pitch. And Man City really did struggle. They didn't seem to have an idea. And again, this is kind of a tiring conversation. Again, very similar to that Spurs kind of element where we're talking about very fundamental things that maybe Man City need to evaluate and kind of review in terms of how they approach this going forward. You know, even when you're speaking to people about this whole situation, I think everyone's baffled that Pep hasn't been able to work out how to grind out a result right now. And he's sticking to the philosophy. It feels like he's being lost at the moment. And I don't know, Roy. I get the vibe of he's lost the dressing room at the moment. You know, certain players don't seem to be playing their usual games that they did, say, 12 games ago, for example. And even Haaland, we highlighted it at the beginning of the season how he was the sole contributor of goals. But this is the real issue, is that they haven't got anyone that's contributing in terms of that clinical edge in that final third either. So that's partially to help us understand that really they're not able to get the ball to him, but because they haven't been able to adapt their kind of ways of working, you know. Whereas last season, if Haaland wasn't scoring, there was Kevin De Bruyne, there was Phil Foden, there was Jack Grealish. That isn't
Julian
happening
Alvarez
this season. You know, Rodri. That they are the key players, and like you allude to, I don't think they ever replace Alvarez, despite, you know, trying to do their ways of trying to balance books and kind of get away with it. I think maybe this was a season too long for them to kind of expect the likes of a Kevin De Bruyne to fill the gap. And, you know, they brought in Gundogan as well. I think a lot of expectation was on him to potentially deliver the goods, and it hasn't happened. So, yeah, I do wonder if Pep made the right choice in extending his contract, because actually I think this is the perfect time for someone fresh to actually go in there now. And I don't know, personally, Roy, I'd kind of go down that line of, do you know what, let's just have a rethink and try and bring someone with new ideas, because I don't know if behind the scenes they're behind him right now. What's your kind of overriding thought of the whole situation?
I think the board are absolutely behind him, because they've offered him a contract. They've offered him a contract extension, right? He signed the extension, but clearly that 1 year extension is a very non-committal commitment, right? It's very like, let's see where this goes. I think you're right with the kind of the vibe isn't right. The players aren't grafting. There isn't that kind of the commitment to the system that you always get with Pep's players, because they know that, okay, maybe I have to sacrifice my normal style. Maybe I have to do this because we get results and I can see it on the field. But when he's asking you to make these sacrifices, like Jack Grealish or whatever, and you're then not getting results, I think players start to go, okay, then why am I following all these rules, right? And it doesn't take long for players to lose faith, I don't think. And I think there's a real issue there. And that this could be like, I'm trying not to smile while I say it, but like there's like something that could be like long-term fixes, because like, how do you replace Kyle Walker? How do you replace Kevin De Bruyne? How do you replace these players that become like icons of the team? And you have to do it while still kind of, you know, maintaining title challenges, qualifying for the Champions
100%.
League, which I don't think they'll necessarily do this year now. Like, especially if this form continues, it's looking like they could be Europa League next year or something, which would be insane.
Yeah, mental.
Like, it's just, and the thing is, with the injuries, like, yeah, of course, John Stones has to go off at half time, right? Or just after half time, I think he goes off. But you've still got the centre, you've still got like Akanji, you've still got Gvardiol, you've still got like, when you look at that starting defence, that's Akanji, Stones, Gvardiol is probably what they would choose to go in the first team, right? You've got Haaland, you've got Foden, you've got Grealish, you've got Silva, like a lot of that team is still first choice players, right? So I think he's kind of hiding a little bit behind the injury issue, I think, because yes, Rodri is a massive miss, but this is bigger than Rodri. It's huge what is happening. They're only above Southampton in the form table now in terms of like how bad their recent form's been. Like, Phil Foden gets his first goal of the season. Like, that kind of sums it all up, where you're like, oh shit, right, okay. Finally, it's a consolation. Doesn't really mean anything. I think it's just, and we'll never know, but I think the amount of uncertainty around the club in general with everything is just leading to this and like bleeding onto the pitch. And I think it will be fascinating to see where this season goes and how Guardiola addresses this, because he's clearly not able to like make do and mend. And like, I don't think their fixtures get any easier. It's fascinating because I think when players that are world-class players start to see it turn around, how do you turn around that dressing room? I'm not sure. I'm not sure how you do it, even when you are Pep Guardiola. So I think it's going to be a long season for Man City. And these players have never faced this adversity before. I said it when they started losing. I think I was like, because we were saying, oh, it's just one loss, they'll get over it. They're kind of, they're mentality monsters. They know how to do this. It's like, well, no, because they've never been on a losing streak. They don't know how to do this. It goes back to me to that Ruben Diaz interview I think he did with Fjortoft, where it was like a really odd interview where he was like, and he was asking a question like, you've never really dealt with this before in your career. How is the dressing room? And he's like, we're winners. We know how to do this. He's like, no, that's not my question. My question was like, how do you address? Don't worry about it. We've won the Champions League. We've won leagues. Yes, no, I know. But how are you dealing with it? And it just, from that interview, we're like, that might just be a tiny microcosm, a little peek into what's going on in the background and how people are dealing with it. And I think it's summed up by Pep Guardiola doing the 6 fingers at Anfield, Grealish doing the 3 fingers at Villa Park this weekend. Like, they're clearly mentally not quite there. So I think it was weirdly predictable, though, the result, right? At no point, before it kicked off, I was like, Villa are probably going to win this, right?
Yeah, I feel almost like Villa seem to bring a different attitude to these games, especially at home. This seems to be like a bogey side for Man City in terms of the fixture list. There's always Spurs, but there's also Villa that they seem to really struggle. They don't seem to get a really good result at Villa Park. And unsurprisingly, I suppose the result went the way of Villa. I don't know about this Jack Grealish attitude as well. I do feel like that was a bit of a strange situation overall. I know there's a lot of beef with the Villa fan faithful as well, that they're giving him jip because of that move. But yeah, it can't be easy on him either at the same time, because I feel like he's not in a place where he wants to be himself. And that probably came together at that particular match, the way that he applied himself. And yeah, it was a very strange atmosphere. But yeah, from a Man City perspective, I don't know how long you give it to kind of say Kyle Walker should not be even in the 16 of this squad. Like, what's he doing anymore? Like, he's just bringing the whole team down.
I have seen a lot of City accounts being like, when do we take the captaincy off him? Like, when does that happen?
Yeah.
It's, grim times. Grim times at the Etihad, but happy times at Villa Park. They'll be delighted. A proper landmark win for them in what's been a pretty up and down season, but for obvious reasons, right? And we just have to quickly say, before we move on, John Duran. Beyond Isaac, who is the striker I most want at Arsenal, Duran would be a very close second. I can't believe West Ham didn't take the opportunity to buy him.
That is crazy now.
He's making them look stupider and stupider by the match day. Just what a player. Delightful player to watch. So let's go on to the next game. And we're going to talk about the team with the best home form coming up against the team with the best away form, and Nottingham Forest winning 2-0 at Brentford. Brentford have been absolutely incredible at home this season. Ola Aina getting another goal in what has been an amazing season for him, and Alanga getting his first goal in a while. No, second goal in 2 games, but it's kind of broken a bit of a goalless streak for him. Nuno Espirito Santo playing it down in the press conference, saying we've not achieved anything yet. I do like the yet. This season, we've kind of been waiting. They've reacted well when they've had losses, like they had the loss against Arsenal and then they bounced straight back. They've had losses and they seem to like, this momentum isn't going anywhere, right? I mean, it is, no. This momentum isn't disappearing. I'm going to edit that. This momentum isn't disappearing.
Certainly not. And it amazes me a bit, Rory, that, Nuno isn't doing anything different necessarily in terms of the way he's going about this business. It just feels like the players suit the system and they perfect it. You've got a hardworking target man in Chris Wood, but then you've got the willing runners down the sides, for example, and then you've got the energy in the likes of Morgan Gibbs-White. And it just feels like the whole team works so well in that system. And even when they are against the wall, Sells in goal is proving such a great addition now. But from a centre-back pairing, we've mentioned about Milinkovic as well, how good he's kind of made it a bit more calmer at the back, a bit more astute in terms of how they play it out of the back at times. And the whole team seems to work really well, which I suppose the result itself was more surprising for me, because I thought this could be a tougher game. I thought it'd be maybe a draw, not necessarily a win for Nottingham Forest. And the fact, Anthony Elanga, for example, scoring his first goal in 30 games. That seems really strange in that respect, that we haven't seen more goals from him. But actually, I think he's done a lot in terms of his contribution in games, and that gets sometimes not necessarily seen because the likes of Callum Hudson-Odoi has a banger, for example, or Morgan Gibbs-White takes their headline. So they're doing really spectacularly well. I think the key question with Forest is, can they maintain this going into the second half of the season? I remember when Wolves did it first time with Nuno Espirito Santo, there was kind of could they be in a Champions League mix? And then they kind of fell towards the end of it. So it'll be interesting to see maybe their approach in a January transfer window, but also a lot of credit to Nuno Espirito Santo because, I don't think we saw this happening. And I just, this feels like a good fit for both parties, the club, the manager, and the style that they're going about it. So a lot of credit. And it's surprising from a Brentford perspective because they really did kind of have to scratch their heads after the goals took place. They didn't know how to break this down. So Brentford, they have to watch out because the home form has been really good up until this point, obviously, but it's the away form that is quite dreadful. And that's why they're kind of hovering at the moment, so to speak, in mid-table. But what was your kind of observations on Forest? Because, could we be talking about Champions League outsiders at this stage?
I think absolutely. If we see this, as you said, if it continues post-Christmas, and I think there's no reason why it shouldn't really. I don't think they're a team that are being figured out. I don't think they're a team that are like system heavy. Like it's not like a Leeds or whatever where it's like, okay, if you do this, like they will adapt and they have their basic system, but they can come up and set up differently against other teams, I think, more than other teams. I think it's a really fascinating club because if they get that big season, let's say they qualify for Europe Conference League or Europa League, right? Let's say I think they could absolutely get Europa League this year, right? With the backing they've got and with the owners they've got, with the money they've got behind them, it could be that real springboard moment where they go, right, now we can spend the big money. Now we can get those big players and we can really push on. So I think there's like a really important couple of months coming up for Forest here and a really exciting couple of months. And like Forest fans must be absolutely over the moon with how this is going because they've gone from so chaotic since they came up to like, maybe this guy has a plan to like, okay, we can see the plan, right? And like, I think if they get any form of Europe this year, which as I said, I think is very likely, they're bringing in Edu in the summer. They're bringing in, like, they've got owners with big money. I think we could really see them push on and like raise this kind of floor even more, I think, in terms of this squad. I always enjoy watching them play. They're just really exciting to watch and their games are always really exciting. They love a late goal. They love a comeback, like very dynamic. And I'm really, really excited to see where this season goes for them. I think Brentford are Brentford. They're just mad inconsistent and they're a bit mad. Yeah. Like, I think their fans would have been quietly confident going into this with their home form and would be disappointed leaving. But I think overall, Chris deserved it, and Matt Sells has a very, very good day to keep the score level, right? So that does keep Forest up in the European hunt. I think this is their best start since the 1970s now. I want to say 1980s. Yeah. It's their best start to a season, which is incredible. And Nuno, again, just playing it down and being like, we've not done anything yet. I think they've got a clear idea of where they want to be. So, exciting times down at the City Ground. City Ground? It is the City Ground, right?
It is the City Ground.
It is the City Ground. Yeah. Good. Elsewhere in the Premier League, it's not even a headline anymore. Manchester United lost 3-0 at home to Bournemouth. That will happen. Semenyo with a goal here, of course. The other goal is provided by Huijsen doing his just a chill guy
nod
signature celebration now, and Kluivert with a penalty. Let's talk about Leicester City 0, Wolverhampton Wanderers 3. They've appointed him. They've appointed the madman. They've appointed Vitor Pereira. Everyone's excited about seeing what that guy's going to get up to. And, well, it's a hell of a start, really. 3-0 win away to Leicester. This is a bit of as good a manager bounce as you want to see, right?
Yeah, turn out for the books in terms of the result itself. I didn't think it would necessarily be this kind of straightforward in that many respects, because I think a lot of people thought maybe Vitor Pereira would take time to maybe adapt and maybe get the best out of this squad, but they really did pull Leicester City apart. You know, it seemed to be a combination of through balls over the top that really caught out Leicester on more than one occasion, and especially for the goals. You know, when Wolves did play it on the deck, they seemed to pull the Leicester City defenders apart, which I think is a bit of a concern, given obviously you've gone away from a pragmatic coach in Steve Cooper to go to Van Nistelrooy, which I don't think necessarily showed any signs that he's actually developing the style of football any better. And certainly from an aesthetics point of view, I don't know whether they feel genuinely this is an improvement, because you look at the squad themselves, and I think there was a number of poor performances across the pitch from a Leicester City perspective. You know, I think Jamie Vardy looks like a sole figure up top, where he's very lonely and isolated without that kind of quality behind him. And it's really telling right now. And, you know, I don't think, you know, Steve Cooper got it fair in terms of that judgment piece, but because he was ex-Forest, unfortunately, that was the nail in the coffin for him. I know the style of football wasn't pleasing, but I don't think this is a massive improvement now in the last few games from a Van Nistelrooy point of view. And you have to question what do Leicester City do going forward. Now, I appreciate they'll probably give him the January transfer window. Will better players play better in the system that Van Nistelrooy is deploying right now? This was a big 6-pointer here, Rory, and almost a Midland-esque kind of derby in itself. So a lot of kind of points scored on the Wolves side of things, but just highlighted for me that, you know, Wolves have got a better quality squad that we knew could be unearthed, but O'Neill wasn't really necessarily deploying it to the best of his abilities potentially. And we've got Van Nistelrooy on the other end of the scheme, where possibly he hasn't got a good squad, but they're not playing any better since the move from Steve Cooper even. So question marks across the board from a Leicester perspective, and I don't know where they go from here, because I can see this being, say, by March they sack him and they're having to rebuild again. But yeah, worrying.
Yeah, well, we said at the time when they sacked Steve Cooper, we said they need to appoint an experienced manager. They need to appoint someone that's going to, if their problem is that Steve Cooper isn't going to keep him in the league, then employ someone who's going to keep you in the league, right? And I think they've gone for that exciting young coach, maybe because he looked good at Manchester United, and you know he had a couple but it seemed like a massive gamble, and obviously at the moment it's clearly not paying off. We do also have to say, mitigating factor, Danny Ward was in goal, not Everson, and Everson has been one of Leicester's best players this year, genuinely an outstanding goalkeeper, so I think that does make a difference. But yeah, that's really making excuses for a terrible performance all round for Leicester. But for Wolves, Jose Sarr back in goal, big performance from him. Cunha back in the goal, Guedes with a goal and an assist. Back to a back three, kind of, you know, a bit of a change in system, and maybe enough. I'm still sticking with the fact that there's enough quality in that Wolves squad. There's enough quality in that team for them to stay up. Maybe they pulled the trigger at the right time. We will see, but big win for Wolves there. Elsewhere, let's very quickly go through the results because I'm very aware of time. Alexander Isak got his first hat-trick for Ipswich against Ipswich as Newcastle won 4-0. Still wondering why Ipswich decided to buy Muric. It's a mystery. West Ham drew 1-1 with Brighton. How Estupinian wasn't sent off in this game blows my mind. One of the worst tackles I've seen in a very long time. But, you know, VAR are cracking down on things like kicking the ball away after a restart instead of dangerous play. So, you know, good to see they're on top of that. But overall, I think a draw was perfectly fair there.
Yeah.
Arsenal won a game we scored in open play. Gabriel Jesus has come back, a 5-1 win for Arsenal. Definitely flatters Arsenal that. I feel like Palace were a lot better than 5-1 suggests. If it wasn't for David Raya, it would have been a much, much closer game. But hey, we got 3 points. Declan Rice scored. Calafiori came back. I'm in a good mood. Everton 0, Chelsea 0. Nothing happened there. Everton getting a couple of, you know, against the bigger teams. They're really locking it down now. Lots of clean sheets for them. Southampton. Adam, we need to talk about even Juric. Juric is coming to the league.
I know.
A Serie A favourite. First thing he does is give Southampton a clean sheet. That's a hell of a start.
Yeah, massive improvement. I don't think I had that on my bingo card for this year, that Ivan Juric would join Southampton. But yeah, I suppose that's a promising start for Ivan Juric. I think a lot will be changing in the coming few weeks, definitely from a point of view of stylistically, as well as kind of the players that he's got available to his disposal. But yeah, positive, given Fulham probably were in the better position of the two clubs and probably expected to win this game. So to get a result in that manner, fantastic kind of springboard, and let's see what happens. But yeah, a name I didn't anticipate to be there. That's for sure, Rory.
Well, I did catch some of this game, and there's a concerted different style now, much more
Yeah.
direct and forward, kind of quickly. They're the first team to stop Fulham from scoring since the first game of the season. Like, it's really impressive that they got a clean sheet away there, and they had a few moments where they could have got a goal. Even Juric looked absolutely furious the entire way through the game. I think he was like ranting and raving about a lot of things. So I think there's a lot of things for him to change there. But Southampton fans, he's a madman. He will keep it entertaining there at least. But yeah, it doesn't take much to improve things. Just a little bit of sensibility, I think. So it's good to see that from Southampton. Aaron Ramsdale gets a clean sheet. I was delighted. And that is the Premier League weekend. I think that's all of the results. So guys, we're going to take a very quick break. And when we come back, we're going to do a little bit of transfer talk, talking about which teams we think will be making big moves and where they need to do it. We'll see you on the other side. We are back, and it's time for the January transfer window to slam open. Does that work? Swing open. I think that's better. And we're going to talk about some clubs that we think are going to be active in the window and what positions we think they need to address. And we've just wrapped up talking about them, but Adam, I think I'm going to kick things off with Nottingham Forest. Yeah. I think we could see them being quite busy in the window here. There's a big opportunity for them to kind of push forward for this charge for Europe and kind of capitalise on this momentum. I feel like a striker, even though Chris Wood is having an amazing season, he fits the system really well, he's doing very well. I feel like when this purple patch might potentially end, they're going to need another option. Now, obviously, they've got Tayo Amwini. He's not really played much this year, but I feel like a striker could be a position that maybe just a little bit more bolster in there, just so that it kind of eases the transition towards the end of the season and gives them a little bit of a boost, right?
Yeah, it does definitely has a vibe of it, doesn't it? I was just trying to have a look at an obvious candidate in my eyes, and it's not necessarily a striker here, Rory, but Adama Traore, just to bring back the kind of vibes for Nuno Espirito Santo, because yeah, he's a type of player that would kind of probably benefit from being under Nuno again, just to add that kind of intensity in the last sort of 10 to 20 minutes of games. I saw he came on as a substitute in the Southampton game, so I'm wondering whether that could be someone that he exploits, because again, Adama can play centrally as well, just might not guarantee goals. That's the only thing.
Yeah, it's the end product is the issue, right? It's the end product is the issue. Well, I'm currently looking up who's the top goal scorer in the Greek Super League, and it is Ayoub El Karbi, who is at Olympiacos. He's got 11 goals in 16 games. It's whether they want to like derail Olympiacos' season, but maybe the owner thinks, you know what, we just take him off there, get Forest into Europe, get all that money, and then it can be given to Edu to spend across the group. I think maybe there might be a move from the Greek Super League or from Olympiacos that kind of gets Forest the reinforcements that they need, because I think we're going to see a big focus. You know how like Watford and Udinese, the Pozzo family kind of switch their focus depending on which one's doing well. I think we might see that with the owners, with Forest kind of getting towards Europe. So maybe El Karbi, who's a very, very exciting striker, a bit old, but very exciting. It could be one to look out for there. Adam, which club are we going to next?
I'm going to go for maybe an obvious one, but here, Crystal Palace, because I think they're just about hovering over those relegation spots right now. I think they may be regretting spending so much money on Eddie Nketiah at the moment in terms of his end products right now.
I will not have this slander. This is 2 episodes in a row that Eddie Nketiah has been dragged through the mud.
Yeah, I think there's an obvious candidate here. He's an ex-Palace player, and that is Wilfried Zaha. He's not having a great time in France. There's a potential here to bring him back to a place that he calls himself as at home as well. And I think given that the circumstances are Galatasaray, his parent club, don't want him either. They want him off the books now. I could see this potentially being a loan move with a subject to maybe a permanent in the summer. But I think given that a lot of reliance was on Eze this season to maybe be that creative outlet, and it hasn't really transitioned, I think they wouldn't go any further wrong with someone like Wilfried Zaha. And I think also, Rory, I think he kind of would fit the Oliver Glasner style of football as well. So actually, I think this would be a good fit for both parties, and I'm sure the fans would get behind it, even though this is what fourth time that they'll be playing with Zaha again at the club. But I feel like that seems like it's got a lot of legs in it. And yeah, it's a bit like Roy Hodgson coming back to Palace, isn't it? It just feels like it's a pair of slippers at home.
Exactly. Well, people love going back to Palace, eh? They really do love it.
They
I
really
can definitely see Zaha finding his way there. I do think, and I don't know if it's something for the January transfer window or for the summer, but maybe you want to get ahead of it, is finding some kind of replacement for Eze. Because I feel like, obviously, they couldn't sell Elise and Eze in the same summer. I feel like Arsenal might make an approach for Eze in the summer. I feel like many clubs might make an approach for him in the summer. And I think maybe getting that replacement in now to have a bit of a transition period. And again, just give another option while you're there, because they rely so heavily on Eze that like just having another option could be key for them. Yeah, let's go for the next team that I think are going to spend a bit of money this summer, because I don't think this January, I don't think the transfer window is going to be that busy really. But I think one club that does need to spend and might panic spend is Manchester City. They've been trying 100%. To keep their purse strings very tight so that they tread this tightrope ahead of the court hearing. But obviously, there is a huge hole in midfield that needs filling now. The name that is being linked is Zubimendi, of course, from Sociedad. He's been chased by Arsenal in the past, by Liverpool in the past, and now by City. Do you see him going out? And I see them just going out, dropping the 60 million, getting him, and kind of it's an automatic fit, right?
Yeah, I could see them trying to splash the cash, but I don't know if he's necessarily the person that will help them in terms of like trying to resolve the whole necessary situation. Because I think Zubimendi is a good player, but maybe from my point of view, is he the person that will be as influential as a Rodri? I'm not too sure. I think there has been this rumour floating about, and it might be a more obvious one here, Roy, but Dani Olmo, his situation at Barcelona is coming to a front right now where they're struggling to register him. And at this moment in time, it looks feasibly like Barcelona might lose him on a free transfer. So I'm not surprised. I've heard Arsenal have also put in a bid for him as well, which would be absolutely incredible if that does happen as a piece of business. But yeah, I could see them trying to entice Dani Olmo at least for 6 months, potentially, with an agreement potentially with Barcelona to kind of say, look, we'll take him off your hands and maybe you can sign him back in the summer. But I feel Dani Olmo would probably want some kind of sense of security. And with Guardiola still being there potentially for next season, then, you know, he could probably entertain that as well, because that will help him at least get some game time, which he's not getting under Hansi Flick right now. So yeah, I think that has a lot of legs. But Zubimendi, I don't think would be something I would be against, but just I don't feel it, because I think he said the sentiments was that he actually wanted to stay where he was when Liverpool came crawling. So yeah, personally, I would say I don't think it has many legs.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, because obviously he has been chased several times. As you said, he's perfectly happy at Sociedad. It's weird because he replaced Rodri in the Spain team when Rodri came off. He comes in, does the exact same job, and does it very well. But you're right, that kind of key leader within the team in that kind of like the social role kind of thing is going to be big shoes to fill. But I think we might just see City throw money at it and be like, just get it over the line. I'm now daydreaming about Dani Olmo joining Arsenal, because, my God, that would be exciting. But yeah, I can't see it. I think we're waiting until the summer for our business. Adam, another club that we think could be busy in January?
I'm going to go with an obvious one, which will be Southampton. I think for me, they've really struggled in terms of the recruitment under Russell Martin in the summer months. And I think what they did lack was potentially experience in terms of midfield. Right now, I think they are lacking someone that is able to potentially give them a bit more impetus in terms of that quality into the pitch. Now, I'm speculating this could be like a loan move at this stage, but I wouldn't be surprised if they maybe look at someone like a Ross Barkley to come across. I think obviously it'd be harsh on him because I don't think he's had much time at Villa, but when he has come on, he's obviously scored the odd goal and been quite influential in certain games as well. So whether that actually happens is another thing, but I think that's the caliber of player that they should look to maybe add to that midfield, because I think defensively they're also quite short, and I have my reservations up top as well. So I think there's a number of areas. There's a lot of
holes to fill.
But if there's an area of the pitch that you kind of think, right, we could get away with the defence being as leaky as it is, but if we've got a midfielder that can create at the same time, we can try and outscore the opponents or at least try and hit them. And with Tyler Dibbling, obviously they've got a really good prospects at the moment. So can you imagine the kind of intuition, like in terms of the connection between Ross Barkley to Tyler Dibbling and potentially set up them for counter-attacking goals? I think that's what they need. So potentially someone that's got that creative mind. Whether that happens though, Rory, is another thing.
I wonder if we see a move from an ex-Torino player that Juric fancies. Maybe a Tomese comes into midfield, adds a bit of steel into midfield, someone who can dictate play a little bit. I think we might see him approach a few players that you have at Torino and be like, you know the system. We'll give you bigger wages.
Yeah, sure.
Let's come over. So I think if I was a Southampton fan, I'd be looking at the Torino squad at the moment. Tomese is a player maybe to keep an eye on. I think he's a very good midfielder. Will fit into the Premier League very well. Very physical, technically very good. I think maybe that could be where they go. One more team that we think maybe could spend money, Everton. They've got new owners. The Freakins are looking to make an impression. Obviously, they're doing pretty well at the moment, bit of an upturn in form. Are they going to back Dyche? Are they going to give him money to spend, or are they going to wait till the summer?
It's interesting, isn't it? I feel they will give him the bare minimum to kind of make sure that they get over the line, so to speak. I think they, in the last few games, you can see there's a bit more resilience within that squad, but that only happens over a certain amount of games. There's obviously a lot of issues with Calvert-Lewin potentially not signing a new contract, so obviously struggling for form as well. Inevitably, he feels like he'll return back to Italy potentially. So I think up top is where they need to address it. Now, my only question mark at this stage is who they're likely to bring in that could be of that caliber to at least stabilise and provide some goal outlets. I think I'm scratching my head on this one because I think if you look at players around Europe, there isn't many that could potentially fit what they're trying to achieve. I think they need someone that is almost of that Wilfred Zaha-esque kind of abilities where, he's got a bit of experience now in front of goal as well.
I'm gonna throw out a bit of a name here. They've made him available for loan in January. Maybe they go for Evan Ferguson. Maybe they say we'll take Evan Ferguson on loan until the end of the season. Brighton want him to get regular minutes. They've said he is available for loan. Maybe Everton take a punt. He's that physical striker that can hold the ball up. A bit of a better finisher, I think, than Calvert-Lewin. I think if you get him back in form, you've got a hell of a striker there. I think maybe we could see Everton take a punt on that one. Because the only name I've seen linked so far is Fulham. Obviously, if Fulham come for him, he's going to go to Fulham. But I think maybe Everton should put their hat in the ring there. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I could see that happening. I think that's the type of player that Sean Dyche would like, right? I think he fits the kind of target man style with a bit more clinical edge. I'd worry about his kind of form at this moment in time because I don't think it's been as great as what we saw at the beginning stages of his career. One name that springs to mind, and I don't think they'll pull it off personally, but I know he's looking for game time, is Christopher Nkunku.
Wow.
As a loan deal to the end of the season, you can guarantee you go to games at Everton, right? And if you think about a bit of a quality kind of outlet, he's someone that would be 100% able to elevate Everton. So if they could be ambitious, Friedkins aren't afraid to show ambition, right? They're not afraid to spend some money. I think that would be quite a bit of shrewd business there. So that's what I'm going to say. Christopher Nkunku on loan to Everton. That'd be a hell of a bargain, personally.
Well, we've seen him do it. Getting Dybala to Roma was a hell of a deal. Like, that is incredibly ambitious. So definitely not afraid of doing that. But Adam, is there one more club, one more player you want to talk about before we leave it?
I'm going to say Leicester City here.
Okay.
I think we've kind of maybe thought about this and talked about it. And again, like the Southampton scenario, they're going to have to be adding quality, but there is the other element of PSR that they have to balance the books. And this is going to sound very obvious here, Rory, but there's a man that's isolated also at Chelsea. He's called Ben Chilwell. Now, realistically, this seems to fit quite nicely. There's a player that obviously knows Leicester City. I think he would add that bit of quality, and potentially for a Ruud van Nistelrooy would provide that outlet, whether you play him further up the pitch in terms of that left wing back position, or whether you play him at left back, or whether you just throw him into that left hand side. Let him be the free flowing kind of up and down marauding kind of outlet, because he can do his defensive duties. But obviously, I just think he's obviously isolated by Maresca. And Leicester City have been sniffing around. Obviously, they have inquired also about Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall, which I know has been linked
That was the
to
name
a
I
number
was
of
about to
clubs
mention as well. Yeah.
But I think realistically, someone like a Ben Chilwell could be a good outlet for them, because I think Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall will have other opportunities. It feels like Brighton have been on the cards. I think Arsenal have been inquiring about his services as well. I don't know if that's a move really, but I think there are a number of clubs, and I wonder if Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall, he knows what Leicester was, what it stands for in his career anyway. I think he wants to push on and maybe go to a progressive club in terms of not really struggling. So personally, Chilwell, a return back to his old stamping ground, I think realistically is going to happen.
I really like that. I really like that move. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. Like Chelsea need to get money off. They need to get wages off the books, don't
Yeah,
they? They need
100%.
to at some point. Like this bomb squad that he named it. They do need to get rid of him. They're going to have an issue getting rid of Mikhailo Mudryk now as well. So good luck with that one. Yes, guys, that is kind of our transfer roundup. I think in general it's going to be a very quiet window. I think most clubs are kind of waiting until summer, seeing. I'm hoping Arsenal somehow pull something off, but I'm not holding my breath. So, guys, this is our last show of 2024. We're going to be back with you around about the 6th/7th of January. Thank you as ever for joining us for another year, officially our 5th year as a podcast. Absolutely incredible. Nearly half a decade. Unbelievable. We just want to thank you again for all the support this year. Do go check out our Serie A podcast. Adam, anything to say before I send the listener home?
Just to wish our listeners and yourself, Rory, happy Christmas, Bon Natale, Vesociant, Feliz Navidad, wherever you are in the world when you're listening to us. I appreciate it, and have a blessed period, time off, whatever you're up to. And more importantly, if you'd like to, give us a review also, because on an Apple platform, we could really do with some variation of commentary. So that would be really appreciated. But otherwise, have a great time, whatever you're up to. Stay safe.
Absolutely. Make that your gift to us, as well as your time. Yeah, so thank you very much, guys. You can find us on all the social medias at Anglo-Italian Pod, except for Twitter, where we're at Italian Anglo Pod. If you're on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe button down there. If you're on the podcast, as we said, give us a subscribe, give us a rating, give us a review. We will love you forever. Guys, absolutely smash your Christmas. Have a great new year. We'll see you on the other side. See you later.
Ciao, ciao.